Hello and welcome to the Repurpose Your Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Aurora Minigallo. So, this is the very first Repurpose Your Purpose podcast episode. And what I would like to do today is to share with you why I am starting this podcast and also a little bit about my journey, professional journey. How did I end up here? So let me start with the podcast, right? I think a lot of the time when we talk about career and business, we focus on making money or we focus on conversations that I don't think we realize how much they are within certain trains of thoughts. Certain they have certain assumptions or beliefs and are somewhat narrow. And with my clients, and I'll tell you just in 1 second who I work with, but with my clients, I have experienced such a variety of conversations. And I am myself interested in so many things and I find inspiration from so many different areas that I really wanted to have a podcast where I could have many different conversations on all sorts of topics that are sometimes very close to or they're very obviously related to work and career, and sometimes they might not be so obviously related to that and yet might inspire you. So who is this podcast for? So it's for you if you want to change careers and you're not sure what you want to do next, or you're thinking about starting a business, or maybe you have a business and you want to grow it in alignment with your vision and in a way that's sustainable and profitable. Or maybe you are a leader of an organization, or whether it's a for profit or non-profit, and you're finding that there are some challenges to managing people and to moving things forward in a leadership position. And for you too, I hope you can get some insight and inspiration here. So, really, I work with people who want to enjoy the work they do. And so it's called Repurpose Your Purpose because even when we have one purpose, all of our lives, sometimes we have to rediscover it. Sometimes we find that our purpose change, and our purpose can be something big that inspires to change the world, or it can be something big in a different way, like we want to really support our families, or have work that lets us enjoy life and is not that heavy. It can be whatever it is for you, right? But really, this idea of the playfulness, rediscovery, creativity, inspiration, and an openness to all sorts of things. Uh, what else? Let me see what else I want to tell you. I'm hoping this feels like a good conversation, as if we were, I don't know, in the same living room, sitting on the couch, or maybe at a nice cafe. And I also really expected to change my mind. um, Record something and then a year from now look back and think, I don't know if I think that way anymore. I'm a big believer that in life it is good to change your mind, discover new things, and grow. It's very sad if we get to 20, 30 years later and we find we never changed our mind on anything. So my invitation is to listen to this lightly, and it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's about listen to it as in like, maybe it will give you an idea. Maybe something will resonate. Maybe something will intrigue you. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Then move on. All right. I'm sure there's more I wanted to say, but That's what I got, okay, for you today. So what I'm planning to do is having different conversations and also once in a while to record an episode that is just like me talking about something. All right, so what about me? What about me? Okay, let me tell you a little bit. First of all, you have to know that although I often share some tidbits about my life in personal conversations, oh, it's so hard to think about recording a whole podcast, talking about myself. So please forgive me if it's a little awkward. The first thing I want to share is that if you haven't noticed the accent, I am originally from Italy and I moved to California, to Los Angeles in particular, when I was 19 years old. So I have lived longer here in California than in Los Angeles. And at this point, I get cultural shock going back, I would say. Right? I'm at that point where, yeah, you can't quite tease apart, the Italian and the Californian in me. But there's some reasons why I really, many reasons why I stayed here, but I do want to share a couple. One that might make you laugh, but I come from Vicenza, which you know, at least when I was growing up, it gets very foggy and rainy and humid and cold during the winter, and then extremely humid and hot during the summer. In other words, not exactly the best of weather. And I was very melancholic, growing up. And when I moved to Los Angeles, and there was rarely rain, and it was the sun, shines here all the time, and it felt so good. I know it might sound really silly to start with that, but for me, the improvement in my mood was so strong. I noticed it right away. So I want to credit the weather because it's a bit of a cliche, but I do think it makes a big difference where we live. But there was something else, of course. Um, and here's where I have to, invite you again to listen. I'm gonna share my experience, and everybody's different, and a lot of what happens gets filtered through our own thoughts and our own, I don't know, digestion of events. So of course, take whatever I say as my own experience with that. I don't mean to generalize, okay? But when I grew up, I really felt very stifled by the mentality where I was growing up. I felt that, generally speaking, I heard you cannot, it's impossible, girls don't do that. um, and there was something in me that just wanted out. I felt so boxed in, very strongly. And when I arrived in Los Angeles, the vibe here was the complete opposite. It was, you can do whatever you want, things are possible. Um, I encountered a mentality that was less about, are you talented or not, and more about, are you working hard? Are you learning? Um, and again, that's just like everything I'm describing is just like how it occurred to me, so somebody else might have had a different experience. But I felt so good, and I think that's what always kept me here. I really experienced something that resonated with the need within me to be creative and to be myself and to be able to explore and to be able to learn. And I've always been somebody very curious and thirsty for learning. And it just, there was just something like even what I do now that's helping people change careers and how I change careers, and I'll tell you about it. it wouldn't have been possible to do, where I'm from. I don't know now again, so, but when I was growing up, if you were, a 40-year-old woman, you were done. You were like old and done, and there was no like, you know, um, really, I didn't have examples or a sense of possibility. And I always found that completely, it just seemed wrong. It just seemed wrong. So of course they were all like heavy things, and some really painful things, and but maybe that's for another for another story. But I really want to tell you about my professional story, because that I think is a little bit more relevant to the Repurpose Your Purpose podcast. I, I really like the arts, and I studied a little bit of filmmaking, and then I studied fine art photography, went to art school. And I was one of those kids who kind of knew what she wanted to do. I had this passion about being a visual artist. And I became a wedding photographer. I loved it. I had a lot of fun, and I did that for years. And then, and then, it started to not work for my life that much anymore. First of all, if you do well as a wedding photographer, your weekends start getting booked, and they get booked a year and a half ahead of time. And I started to miss being with friends, and especially during their important celebrations. And it was a little bit heavy for me. And then I couldn't see myself grow old, and still doing what I was doing. And and again, this is my experience, right? Like, so if you're a wedding photographer listening to this, you can totally grow old and do it. Like, I'm just sharing my own experience, but I couldn't see it when I was thinking in the future for myself. And the photographers I saw that were maybe 20 years older than me or something like that, I felt like their strategy was to shoot less and then hire people to be photographers under them. And I just, it's a very smart business move. It makes a lot of sense if you want to grow. But I liked to be the one with the camera, right? I just, that wasn't appealing. So I started to feel like, I don't know, like I spent a lot of time with my identity wrapped up into being an artist, and also I had worked really, really hard to be a wedding photographer and have my own little business. So as I'm sort of thinking about this and not sure, I think what gave me a bit of a push was my best friend in Italy, was like my best friend since high school. She called me one day and said she was gonna get married and whether I was gonna go to Italy for her wedding. And, it was only like a few months away, like a short amount of time. And I was booked, and you can't just get out of shooting a wedding. And that was booked. The plane tickets were very expensive. I couldn't afford to just give up the job, even if I could have. I think that was that one moment where I was like, okay, I've enjoyed this, I loved it, but I have to face the fact that, yeah, change is calling me, you know. But then what? I had no idea what to do. I had no idea what to do. Um, that was very confronting. And so as I grappled with this, but what do I do next? One of the things that occurred to me is that I really enjoyed marketing. I had marketed projects. I'd marketed, of course, my own business. Photography is a very competitive kind of business. So sometimes photographers can be really ahead of the game when it comes to marketing. I really geeked out on it, I loved it. But I never considered that a possible career. And, for two reasons. One was that my self-identification as an artist, right? I had this identity, this thought about myself. So I never really looked outside of it. And the other thing is that, as I mentioned, I went to art school and, I joke, but it's only half a joke that there was only one word that was worse than business in my art school, and that was marketing. So I think I had a lot of prejudices against marketing, and I imagine all marketers to be manipulative and to be a horrible thing you have to do to trick people and, all this kind of thing. So I had to really sort of let go of my own thinking up to that point, which had helped me. It was great, but yeah, reached uh, the end of its usefulness. And you'll see that this is a theme of what I'm going to talk to you about in this first episode, and probably for a few more episodes, because we get stuck a lot because we don't want to give up some thinking, and we often don't even see that that's what we're doing. So once I sort of opened myself up to the idea that, okay, well, marketing, okay, that's a good idea. I could do marketing. Then, of course, I got confronted with the fact that I never had a job at an office. I always worked independently and as an artist or as a teacher, as a trainer, things like that. But I never worked in an office, and I really didn't have the money and the time to go back to school and study business or marketing or get an MBA or any of these things. Okay, I needed to change careers with almost no resources now. That's basically where I was at, okay? Which made me ingenious. And in general, I've always had to deal with things with very, very, very little material resources. I think that's really an important thing to point out because it shaped my thinking, meaning that it forced me to think outside the box. And it also forced me over the years to learn how to learn on my own and to um, have a little bit of an instinct for, let's say good people, right? People that might see beyond um, superficial characteristics or who are open to somebody different. So I really want to put it out there because as you listen to this story, imagine that that's the undercurrent that I really was coming from. Okay, how do I do this? That feels quite impossible. And when I was, looking at how to do things like Googling advice, they always made it sound like you needed more outside everything, right? But what I've discovered in life is that even when you need outside resources, the journey always begins with yourself. I've always found that I have to first open myself up and I have to take a leap in my own mind before I can receive or I can work towards um, what I need. So, all right, marketing. Well, you always change careers in the time and place where you're at. And at the time, I was living in San Francisco and social media had just started, was still at the beginning. And, as I was researching how can I be a little bit competitive? How can I get into marketing? What should I pursue? What angle? Somebody was so kind to share with me that he had heard visual software companies selling visual software, that catered to artists were really looking to get into social media, and that it was very difficult for them to find somebody who already had experience in social media and was an artist, right? Or to find an artist that had experience in social media, however you want to say it, that it was difficult for them. And when he said that, it's like, like a light went off in my head, and I thought, okay, I have that, and maybe that's what will make me a little bit competitive. So that's what I did. I focused on that, and very quickly, I was able to pitch that to a company. I wasn't even looking for it, but I pitched that I could get them some results. So I was a little bold, but I also was confident, that I could actually deliver, and that's how I got my foot in the door, right? And my career picked up fairly quickly because, and this is another thing that for me it's really important. Well, I'll tell you first what I just said. Like, you have to be in action. You have to be really plugged into the here and now, both within you, what you want, what you already know, what skills you have, what interests you, but also like put your feelers out, right? Take bold action, be courageous, don't be fake, right? Like, I was being courageous, but still like offering things that I thought, okay, yes, I could do this, right? um, but also I think what I did was I always focused on how can I contribute? What makes sense? What will serve the client, the employer, right? And it's interesting thinking back because so much of the advice online was like, oh, at the time, again, when I was, you have to know the right people, or you have to have the certain degree, or you have, it was all these superficial things. But I couldn't get these superficial things, easily. Maybe, meeting people. Yes, I had learned how to network, right? Because I already had a business, so I was into networking. um, but it's like you have to focus on solving problems and contributing and serving. That's where your next career will come from, right? Um, so I liked marketing. I really liked working in marketing. Um, it was a total new experience for me. Um, it was sort of very interesting to work at a company as an employee after working for yourself, because I think I understood much more what my bosses were going through. I think before having the experience of working in my own business, I tended to be, this is gonna sound bad, but kind of entitled. My mentality as an employee before being self-employed was always like, why don't they pay me more, or why don't I have this benefit? Like, even though I wasn't working in an office, as I said, but maybe, as a server, or like even as a contractor, like before really having my own business, I think I thought a lot more me. While once I got my own business, I started to see like, wow, there's a lot of pressure. Um, Nobody knows what they're doing, like I started to have this bigger view. So when I went and got into companies as an employee in marketing, I think my career benefited because I had that understanding. I had that understanding. So I'm just sharing that because you know, if you are listening to this, don't underestimate what you learn on the job, even if it's a different job, or what you learn having a business, even if it's a different industry. We learn a lot just by doing, right? And being in the game. So anyway, fast forward a few years, and I think it's during this time that I really started to experience coaching as a client. And the coaching I was exposed to was like, do, like reasons or results. And it was really much about what do you want, go and achieve it, that kind of thing. And look, it worked. I was achieving things that I wanted. But at some point, I found that for the first time in my life, I lost myself. I had gotten so much in this game of achieving, and without realizing this, I had fallen into this thinking of, I'll be happy when I have more money. I have to control this about my life. That's the only way I'm gonna, be okay. Like, I had become more outside focused, and I had more pressure. I didn't like how I showed up at times. There was a feeling of I don't even recognize myself. And I also, it dawned on me, I was experiencing what you always read about, but you quite don't understand until you really experience it yourself, which is like, oh, I'm achieving all these things that I think will make me happy, and yet I am not happier. That's a powerful wake up thing when you experience that, because that's when you really start getting a glimpse of how much of our experience come from the inside. And we keep thinking it's the thing out there that will make us happy, but it's not the thing out there. Okay. So I read a lot. I've always been a big reader. I shared at the beginning of this episode, I like to learn a lot. I've always been like that, probably even more now, if possible. And at that time, I was reading a book, I was actually listening to it, called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And that book, I was listening to this part in that book where Michael Singer talks about how he realizes how unhappy he is listening to the little voice in his head all the time, and it never makes him happy. And he always feels like he has to control life. But one day he sort of realizes, well, the sun comes up, and people go about their days, and life unfolds without him having to control, and it's actually quite beautiful. Right? And he decides he's going to surrender to the perfection of life. And in a simplistic way, I'm gonna say here, and I'll go with the flow, but it's much deeper than this, okay? But essentially, to make it short, when I heard this, I still remember, because I was washing dishes in my kitchen listening to this. It's like you know, I I want that. Like, I just wanted that. I heard this and I recognized, yeah, I'm always trying to control. I'm always looking for the next thing. Like, I don't have this peace inside that he's talking about. I want to be able to surrender to the perfection of life as well. It felt like a very, it's just one of those life-changing calls. And so I answered. And so this is where, again, I'm telling you my experience. This is not a how to change careers. I don't necessarily recommend this. But this is what I did. I quit my job without a plan, okay? Because I had been so obsessed with plans for the past few years. And so constantly I know what I want to do next. I'm looking for what to do next. I'm constantly, in this mode. I went the complete opposite. Yeah, okay. Maybe it was too much. I don't know, but I'm just saying, I'm just being honest here, what I did. So, of course, Michael Singer, is meditating. So I'm like, great, I'm gonna meditate. And and this was 2015, and I remember, because my last day at work was December 30th, 2015. And I decided I'm gonna meditate. And of course, being me at the time, I had to control exactly how that would happen. So it would have to be near my house, of course. And then I had tried different types of meditation, and I thought the one I should really try again was, Tibetan Buddhist meditation, but the traditional kind, right? Like I was all like that. And you have to also understand that silent meditation had never worked for me. In fact, I mean, I found relaxing, but people talking about all these things you feel in meditation, like, no, none of that. I just felt like, okay, I guess I can be silent and be a little bit relaxed, okay? But I figured, maybe if I apply myself again but I cannot find exactly, this type of meditation near my house, all of this. And I should say that at this point, I moved back to Los Angeles. I'm in Los Angeles. And anyway, I asked my neighbor who's lived in this area of LA for 30 years. And this will make you laugh, but again, I was like, so, you know I've decided to surrender to the perfection of life, and I'm gonna meditate. Do you know a place near here that, and I go with my requirements. And she goes like, no, but the Sikhs meditate, and tomorrow is New Year's Eve, and I'm going. And would you like to go to the temple with me and meditate? And I immediately, it doesn't matter what she had proposed. I immediately was like, nope, it has to be this type of meditation. I had it all in my head. She was like, wouldn't you going to surrender to the perfection of life? All right, busted. Okay. First day of my own surrender experiment. All right, we're off to a good start. So, all right, fair. Good. So I said, okay, tomorrow I'm going to go meditate with you. And I don't know what to expect. I don't look it up. We just walk there. It's very close to where I live, and we walk there. And when we enter the Gurdwara, which is a Sikh temple, um, I did not expect that. I didn't know what to expect, and I did not expect to see two women playing the most beautiful kirtan music. And I had never even considered that maybe meditation wouldn't be silent. And remember, silent meditation had never worked for me. I tried many, many times. So already this is beautiful and surprising and unexpected. And I sit there. And so I sit and I do the thing that I've learned to do, which is I close my eyes and I sit in a certain posture and focus my eyes while closed to, right here in the middle of my eyes, the brow. And I could meditate. For the first time in my life, instantly, I could meditate. And after that, this whole idea of surrendering to the perfection of life took a whole other, I don't know, I think I was even more committed to it, because the moment I let go of my need to know and plan and control, and instead I let myself be, look what I discovered near where I lived, easily accessible, just waiting for me. Well, not really waiting for me, but right? All that was keeping me from it was just this idea that I need to know, right? And yeah, it was amazing. And it was an absolutely amazing experience. That started what I like to call the monastery phase of my life, meaning I really deepened this exploration of living from a place of not knowing, of trusting, of surrendering, of openness. Um, it was, in a way, it was very difficult because we don't even realize how many layers of this conditioning we have. And when I say that, I don't mean I'm done with them. I mean, there's so many more, right, to still go through. But at least now I sort of expect that. But also, in another way, was easier because everything before took so much effort and energy and tension. And I started to really relax. I think, somebody who became a really good friend of mine, who met me right around that time when I started meditating, she said when I first showed up, she had such a negative, like impression, that I seemed very angry and very tense, and I don't even remember honestly being that angry, but I guess my energy was just very tense in this pressure, in this fear that if I don't know what I'm doing, right? But then she said after 2 years it was like a whole other person. And in fact, one of my really old friends here in California, after a few years, told me I spoke differently, right? And it really, but it's so interesting because all I did was shedding layers of conditioning, letting myself be more and more who I am, but at a deeper level. So letting go of my own identifications with who I think I should be, or who I think I am, and actually letting myself be, at a deeper level. Slowing down, but I also was getting a ton done. I was taking a ton of action, but it didn't have the same pressure. So what did I do? Well, so remember that, I'm really overcompensating at this point to wean myself off, essentially to wean myself off an addiction to controlling and planning. Okay, so I went 180 degrees, which again, don't necessarily recommend, but that's what, I did. I can be a little extreme at times. So first I lived off a little bit of savings, but I couldn't live off savings very long. Um, so I didn't want to do my usual thing, which is now I have to have this whole plan on what to do. I decided, I am going to, well, do some marketing, independently, because that's what I could do. But also, I'm gonna start being in life, going with what feel right to me. Like try something without having to plan a whole business or a whole something around it. I did know I wanted to work for myself because I missed that and I really liked it. So since I changed careers from photography to marketing, I had this idea of it was so hard to find what I wanted to do next that it would be great to teach other people. But, I would always bump into, but how do you make money? But how would you scale? But how would you do this? Like, I couldn't see all the steps in front of me. Therefore, I was never doing it. And once in a while, people would ask me, can you help me? Can you give me advice? And I would usually like say no, or, don't put a ton of effort in it because again, in my mind, I was like, I don't really see how this would even work. But soon after I started surrendering, two friends of mine out of the blue called me and they said, hey, separately, and they said, hey, I don't know what I want to do and I'm thinking about changing careers, and will you share how you did it? And so I was like, okay, this time I'm not going to think so much about it. I'm going to go with what feels right to me. And it feels right to me to say yes. And actually, if I let myself do what feels right to me, it feels right to me to invite them to my place and for a few meetings and explain to them together a bunch of stuff. And this was not what feels right to me as a business, by the way. This is literally like me letting go of all this thinking and starting to live life from what I love, what I want to do. And so, okay, so I coordinate with them. I don't remember 3 or 4 times they're gonna come. And then the same day that I coordinate this, I go to a meetup group, a random meetup group, to make new friends. And people there ask me, what do you do and all that. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm surrendering to the perfection of life and all that. And by the way, I have a couple of friends coming over and I'm sharing with them how to change careers. And two people at this dinner said, oh, can I come? Okay. Again, old me would have never said yes, but I'm trying something new. So, okay. So I had four people, right? And so the day is coming quickly when I'm gonna start teaching them some things about changing careers. And okay, time to prepare. And I have experience as a teacher, okay, and I have experience also as a trainer and working with people in groups in pretty heavy situations. And okay, so I'm gonna prepare a curriculum, what I'm gonna teach. And I start working on this, and I'm having fun with it and with visuals and stuff. I love the curriculum building, I love that stuff. But I feel so much energy, like this energy comes up through me. Like like I kid you not, it was so intense. I couldn't sleep all night. It felt like I was alive. Like it felt like this amazing power surge through me that I felt like I love this. Like I am enjoying it so much. Like I'm on fire with it. Uh, that was that was the start of me opening up to, oh, okay. I don't know I don't know where this is gonna lead to. I just have fun doing it. And for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, I basically just started to play around with things that I like to do. Even silly things, like I would always complain, that, oh, in Los Angeles, it's hard to make friends and people are not as community minded, all these complaints. And the street near where I live, there are all these little shops. And one day it dawned on me that why don't I go make friends myself? Why don't I go meet the community myself? And I walked down the street and I entered every store and I got curious about them. And with no motive, right? And yet this beautiful relationship started from me taking the step. So I really started to live more and more from that place of openness and heart and not having a goal I have to reach, or it was really this beautiful unfolding. And when it felt right, it felt like, okay, maybe this could be a business. Maybe this idea of career change could be a business. And one step at a time, a friend of mine came up with the name Repurpose Your Purpose. And I created a meetup group and organized a get together. And it's funny because all these people came, and of course, I had a ton of fun, organizing and everything. And I led a workshop, and as I said, I had already experience for years, but it was such a hit. It was such a hit. And I was still going, one step at a time, surrendering, no plans, on purpose. And at the end of it, people ask me how they could keep coming or hire me as a group and all that, and I was like, I don't know. I don't have a plan on purpose. I'm surrendering to the perfection of life. Okay, all right. I felt, maybe it would be good to plan a few steps ahead. But yeah, it was this beautiful experience, you know. So all of this about me, not because that is the, whatever many steps to change careers or start a business, but because my coaching now, years later, not only has expanded beyond career change, although I still work with people who want to change careers but are not sure what they want to do next, but I also work with business owners, I work with leaders. But I think that at the core, some of these principles are always present in my coaching. That is, take action. Don't get stuck on the control and planning. At some point, it makes sense to plan further ahead. But if that's coming in the way, instead of helping, you don't need it. You can go step by step. And in fact, step by step, leaning into the here and now can be the best move, you know, can really lead to innovation. And being really attuned to people, always doing work on myself. Over the years, well, I always have a coach. Absolutely. In fact, you know, I'll have also a conversation. I'll have conversations with coaches on this podcast. So I always have a coach. I've had mentors. I've had a spiritual teacher. Like, we learn from other people, and sometimes we learn from other people in structured way, but sometimes we learn just because we cross paths. And so I've always really appreciated and valued human to human relationships, but I think over the years that appreciation has deepened even more. And what else? I think a sense of curiosity and playfulness and not taking myself too seriously have also helped. And when I get away from these things, I know I'm gonna be in trouble. So I don't know, there's so much more I could share with you, but I think this captured a little bit the essence of who I am, what I do, and the sort of explorations and paths I like to get lost in and explore. Because I really would like this podcast to capture a little bit of that feeling. That's it for today. If you want to know more about what I do, please check out repurposeyourpurpose.com. And yeah, wherever you're seeing this or listening to this, subscribe to the podcast. I'm very new at podcasting, so be patient as I find my way. Don't give up on me. Uh, but enjoy, any episode that you end up listening to or watching. And I will see you next week.